can read them to you as questions come up. So yeah, we can absolutely. There are hopefully we'll have some people watching and tuning in, and we can just keep an eye on the chat. There we go, and go from there. Yeah. So all right. Julia, do you want to keep an eye on the chat?
I can. I will have to go over to YouTube to do that. Let me do that.
Okay.
I just have to open me up and
I can pull it up. I mean, I can pull it up on my iPad if you
I can do it.
Because it syncs a little bit off. But hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Stenhouse from Little Metal Foxes. And that is, or wherever she is Julia Lowder from Little Metal Foxes. And we're very excited tonight because we have Canadian artist and metalsmith Jeff De Boer with us. And hi, Jeff. How are you doing tonight?
I'm really good. It's minus 19 outside this evening here in Calgary.
Oh my gosh, that is chilly. Stay inside.
Well, I'm glad my studio's indoors.
Well, and this is your new studio that you're in, and you were going to give us a little tour of your studio. And I know we have some questions about what you're doing and your work and stuff. And you just had a marvelous article in National Geographic on you recently that is pretty exciting. I know you were saying that was, you felt like, yay, like that was a big check of self-validation, I think is kind of what we, for you. Was that?
Yeah, I think all of us as artisans, I think there's a sort of a sensation that, you know, even though I'm also a conceptual artist, but also being an artisan, sometimes you feel there's a bit of a class structure or a divide there. And my work has always been, I've always been more comfortable in the world of museums and artifacts than really in the world of sort of the high conceptual art world. And it's not that I couldn't fit in that world. It's just that I prefer one over the other. And my ideas have always been driven by artifacts and how were they created, why were they created, when were they created, but importantly, what is it about them that makes them survive and get curated and end up in museums? And those artifacts have always turned me on to want to be an artisan and maker. And so when I'm making things like suits of cat and mouse armor, I'm thinking about the future too, about maybe someday my work will end up in collections in museums. And hopefully people who've collected my work might donate their work to museums at some point. The question is then, is it a feedback loop? Do I inspire the next generation? Am I inspired by the people, the artisans that made Tutankhamun's golden death mask? 100%. And you can't help but imagine when the day that they finished that piece, they were probably having a beer with their friends like we do when we finish something substantial, and saying the same things and saying, you know, I don't know about this tomb business, but I'm sure, you know, 1,000 years from now, when they crack this thing open, this object's going to fry people's noodles. And I love that conversation and that reason for working. Well, so when something like National Geographic comes along.
Yeah, a lot of those pieces too, I think you've got a certain amount of thinking that, you know, they were building those things to impress, not just, you know, 1,000 years from now, somebody cracked it open, but they literally were making that stuff to impress the gods so
That's
that
right.
people could, like, you know, proceed into the afterlife. So it's like, you know, these commoners, you know, we're trying to impress, you know, Osiris or whomever, or, you know, in the process. But yeah, you know, I think that your work certainly does that. I think that, you know, 1,000 years from now, it's going to be incredibly highly revered because it's just, you know, it's exceptional craftsmanship and beautiful idea and beautiful work. So yeah, it I think would hold up to the test of time pretty well.
I hope so. You know, again, what's interesting is Kristen Rami, who was the archaeology editor and writer for National Geographic 2.5 years ago, we had an interview. And in that conversation, I didn't say anything. I asked her to tell me, what do you think this is about? And she said, very much the same sorts of things. She thinks that, my work will be quite funny 500 years from now.
Yeah.
When all this being alive in the moment. And there is that question, when do we go from a contemporary object to artifact? Is it after we die? Does it take 100 years? Does it take 5 years? When does an object transfer from a newly made object to some kind of authentic historical artifact? When does it happen?
Well, so in the case of, all history being wiped out or on computers and computers go away, then you've got, little or no documentation about what these things were, 500, 1,000 years from now. So it's kind of like, were they fighting these creatures? Is that what they were doing? Or mice, like, where did they have little mice metalsmiths that were making these things? So I think it's kind of, you've got something there that could be, as we are puzzled about some of the things that are from, 2,000 years ago, about what they were, how they functioned, who made them, where they came from. That would be really interesting to, 2,000 years from now, and people are like, so cats and mice had armor at the time, mostly in Canada.
Yeah, I read many of the comments from the online National Geographic article, and some of them were really good, some of them really bad. But I mean, the best one is just like, why? Just the one word, why?
Why not?
Because why not? Because it was there.
Yeah.
Is that why they climbed Annapurna?
Yeah. There was a niche that wasn't filled that mice needed armor in. Yeah, exactly. Well, Julia, what have we got going on in the chat? Anything going on?
Nada.
Okay. Well, Jeff, do you want to show us around your studio? I can pin you if you want to give us a little tour.
Yeah, I guess we can segue the conversation to the things we make, and this. Maybe we'll just talk about the space for a second before I take you on a bit of a tour.
Yeah.
This is a new studio. I just really sort of having my second week in this new space, so there's still maybe a little bit more decorating, certainly some fine tuning to go along. But when I started designing this studio 18 months ago, I was transitioning from kind of the luxury of space. The old studio that I was renting on 2 floors was around 2,400 square feet. And I'm downsizing into a 500 square foot studio. So there's a lot of questions about how are the ergonomics, how are my tools going to transition, what's going to come with me, what do I need, will I make it fit? And you start looking at a lot of, I guess with all things, we talk about our favorite tools. I've always said to people that the most important tool you're ever going to have is the space first. That it's the right size, not too big, not too small, has the right kind of floors, walls, electrical, power, you name it. That just being able to start I had the luxury of being able to build this studio custom from the ground up, basically. And that process of laying out a studio is interesting, because I don't know if you guys ever laid out your studios, but did you ever make paper models? You do a floor plan and you cut out all these paper models of, scale models or everything, right? And you lay it all out and you figure out if this is going to fit or not. And so, when we were looking at the original footprint, because this studio is a second story addition on top of an existing garage in my backyard.
Yeah.
We found out we had to add some floor. So we had to cantilever, because my equipment just wasn't going to fit in a way that was comfortable for me. And you look at a lot of workshops, especially the jewelry level workshops, they're usually fairly cramped, and it looks cool and everything's right away sort of immediately at your touch, but there's something about having a little bit of space to walk and move around. I have a friend or an apprentice who's in a wheelchair, so that is one of the considerations, making sure there's enough width of aisle space in the studio for that. Mm-hmm. So all those considerations are going through your head, and I have the good fortune of being able to be my own architect, and I have architect friends and engineering friends, and they're all coming over and helping you design your space for yourself. And
I'm sure
then
there was
there's
a
the
lot of,
process.
Jeff, have you thought of, it occurs to me, what
Yeah.
if you, you know,
Totally, yeah.
how would it be if, yeah.
So many
Yeah.
so many random suggestions on how you could do things differently or better, right?
Yeah. Well, this is my third studio. So you'd hope that after 36 years and building your third studio, you would get it right. For sure, it can't be 100% right. That's never possible unless
Yeah.
you have infinite amounts of money and resources, which I don't have. So
With
let's
infinite amounts of resources. I mean, how do you define perfect, right? I mean, the problem is with no limitations, then, you know, how do you even decide?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, you've got to get the studio built. You cannot just sit on your hands. You know,
Right.
you're going to shut down for a while. So you know how it goes. So anyway, let's switch the camera here so you guys can have a bit of a view of the studio. So now we're in. Switch the camera. So I'm in the corner by my drafting table, and you kind of get a nice view of
Wow.
the whole space. And when I turn around, which I will do, this is a little extra niche that we built that extends out over the sidewalk in my backyard that provides shelter for snow. But also this is where I needed to have my drafting table, because when I first laid out the studio, I wanted to put the drafting table in, it just kind of dominated the whole space. So having this extra little space is my little cubby hole. And you can see, you know, again, while we're in there, I'm doing some design work. This is like an original pencil drawing, the ink drawing, and then these are the scale miniatures. These are the eyebrows that I'm working on for my
Right.
Who cat. So you get a bit of a view of that. Of course,
Right.
you know, window.
Well, it's nice to have some clean working room to design in. And one of the things that I know Julie and I have talked about a lot lately is the design element of what you're doing and taking some time to render it out, make some plans before you, just, start burning up some metal. Sometimes it's a good idea to have a plan before you go forward. And having a clean space to do that is really nice.
Yeah, and it is its own little space. And I think maybe psychologically too, you just get into this little space and really cozy, and you have the bigger shop is behind you. So that'd be sort
turn
of
your back on all of that, and just face the wall.
Yeah, turn your back on it all. And again, just figure out where your photocopier is going to go, because you need, laser photocopier to make transferable artwork and doing some of your basic layouts. So then, because that's the design area, the next part of the studio is just the storage drawings table. So there's also room on top of this for working, but in here you have lifetime of your drawings and reference material that you've created for yourself, and that transitions over to the other part of the studio. Is that I certainly have lots of wall spaces. You'll see that I don't have very large windows in the studio. I like sunlight, just secondary light, but walls are more valuable to me than windows.
Yeah, right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So, terrible but true. But the nice thing about building the new studio is that you can go and buy these tool cabinets, and inside these cabinets you can now lay out all of your stakes and tools in a nice way.
Yeah.
And they don't get covered in dust. And there's an entire arsenal of my stakes that I've made over the years for both cats and mice. And you have your favorites on the top, where you lay them out, where you're going to use them. So that's where I think it takes a little bit of time, because slowly as I use my tools, that they have to move up into the most prioritized and most important drawers, so that you're not spending time looking for things. I guess that's one of the parts of setting up your studio. Just taking the time,
It's not an accident that top drawer means, or top shelf is the most important thing, right? Like that's not an accident that those phrases have entered our language.
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, and
again,
Jeff, let me ask you this about your cabinets there. Are they, because I know sometimes they usually sell those either with wheels or on wheels. Are those?
That's right.
right on the floor? So
they're right on the floor.
Height?
I didn't bother putting the wheels on them. So that when I built an extra cabinet, so there's an extension here. Yeah. This is the commercial drawer. There's an extension, and then I was able to get an almost 10-foot table because I put two of these together to make the extra Beautiful. Cabinet system. Well, so that also gave me this as a cabinet. Stuff. So there's extra material storage here for some of your materials, and that's because in the corner you have your sheet metal storage. So there's all your bits. I have a foot shear. It's not in the shop because they couldn't lift it up and get it into the shop, but I have a machine shop downstairs.
Oh, nice.
The garage. Well, I'm not showing that tonight, but there's basically a small machine shop downstairs.
Yeah.
But anyway, just building reasonably integrated looking cabinets from scratch and getting off the shelf. These Husky tool cabinets are really useful. But it ended up with the also slightly deeper. This is not like a kitchen cabinet.
Nice.
These are 30 inches deep, so they have room for some stuff on the back and room to work along the table.
Yeah.
Because what makes a table useful is not having too much stuff on it. Of course, there's some mice here. We can.
I was going to say, it looks like you've got some mice there, right on top.
I do. We have time. We'll look at that.
Well, and you've got. I have to say, one of the benefits I'm sure to having those directly on the floor is that you don't lose things underneath them.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, you don't want stuff rolling underneath. Everything has to be sealed against the floor, so that you don't have things disappearing.
That's smart.
Yeah.
If you're not a jeweler or someone who works with small parts, that would not naturally occur to you. But for those of us who've spent times with our butts in the air and our knees on the floor, we're all like, "Sing it, brother, preach." Yes. Like, oh my God, I lost.
So we'll just we'll have a quick look at the sort of the ergonomics and the relationship of my jewelry bench to the shop itself. So you can see that this is in the center of the shop, and to one side you have your hammers and your vices, and this is I don't have all these special tool holders because I'm always making my own stakes, so we tend to clamp things in vices, and that's okay. There's ways to clamp things in vices if they don't move, and ways to do things, but that's either you have these fancy these tool holders and you have these store-bought tools, or you're making your own tools and you're working with vices. It doesn't make any difference. But what does matter is your vices are really, really solidly mounted, on solid stumps. And the more weight you have in your table, the better, because that reduces bounce and vibration and all those other things. The same thing with your chasing tools. I know we talk about our favorite tools, but this is a valve from a pipeline. That's a pipeline valve. You have a little ball valve in your water lines.
Yeah.
So this is for chasing, and this fitting on top. I'm not going to pull up, but this comes off, and you can put this underwater to cool it down. But this sits in a leather ring so that it slides, but when you hit it, it doesn't move. Does that make sense? So it slides when you push, but if you hit it, it doesn't move.
Yeah.
So when you're tapping, anyway, but that also can be, of course, in Alberta, we have really big ball valves. So this is a monster, this one. And that's a giant, that's a giant pitch device for chasing large things. And this is exactly the same thing. But again, the weight of these things are really important, that they don't have vibration, because you're chasing and other things. There's no vibration.
How much does that big one weigh, just out of curiosity?
It's not too bad. It's about 100 pounds.
Yeah, but more than your average engraving ball.
This piece comes off, so there's no issue with it. But again, but even though it's super heavy, it's really easy to move.
Yeah,
really easy to move. This is kind of sitting here, believe it or not, semi-storage. This isn't exactly where it sits when it works. These are sort of the main two stumps that you have. when you're working, and you have your bench. And my benches, I don't know how big your jewelry bench is, but mine are a little bit bigger. I call them kind of heroic scale, because I'm dealing not really with little gemstones. Got an entire suit of cat armor on here at times. So it's just a little bit bigger. And there's, and I don't have, I'm not worried about losing gold too much, but I have a secondary table that slides up away. There's a vise right beside me for setting rivets and all that other lovely stuff. So as I rotate in my, if I'm chasing and I rotate over, stand up, hammer, stake, back, so this is really sort of ergonomically set up for a set of tasks that I want to be really quick about, and I don't want to go very far. So, and so that's the most compression. Anyway, I'm gonna have a quick look at my chasing today. It turned out pretty good. Is that showing up?
Yeah, it looks great.
And these are, now tell us, these are eyebrows. Tell us.
Yeah.
You must have said something to Jennifer, because she said, oh yes, like she knew what you were talking about, but I don't.
Yeah, those are the eyebrow ornamentation on the Sutton Hoo cat. I can show you where that's going to be. So this is just a photocopy, but Sutton Hoo helmet has these eyebrows on the helmet.
Oh.
And so this is my sculpt here, but you can see that. So there's the clay model that I've sculpted on this. So nice. I've measured this and draft. So I'm slowly, whatever you see in clay, I'm replacing in metal slowly. This copper piece is just a stand-in. That'll be chase nickel later, but it's a catch-22. You have to have all your fittings to make sure they fit the metal before you chase the metal. But it's nice to chase the metal before you have your fittings. But so anyway, the best way to do it is just make temporary. Yeah. So let's get the fittings onto this first, and then I'll reverse engineer the next part. But that it's the luxury again of being able to take the time to do that. You often can be in too big of a hurry. The Sutton Hoo cat has to look like a cat, so I've taken a lot of liberties with it. Yeah, I kind of have to in the end, but again, it's nice. And of course, going back to sort of the studio, this is the back table. Of course, this is on wheels and rolls. It's a multi-purpose table. At the moment, my photography setup is just sitting beside it, and I can just park my light here all the time. If I'm going to weld or something over here, I will take that away. But 99% of the time, that light fixture can just be parked against the wall, and you still see sort of the black velvet curtain. I know it's not very attractive.
Yeah, but it's so nice to have the light already set up. You don't have to set it up each time. You can just pull it out and turn it on.
So I can clear the table, drop the velvet, turn on the light, take up my phone, take a quick photograph, or when I'm doing my under 60-second demos every day, this is kind of the place where it happens. So really quick, go over, do my, videotape my little thing, put everything back if I need to, or leave it if I don't care, doesn't matter. But it literally is under 2 minutes to switch from work table to sort of photography or a video, backdrop for whatever he's doing. Again, if it's difficult, you won't do it. So making it easy for yourself.
You've got to make it, right? You got to reduce the friction. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you guys know what this gigantic beast is?
Well, I presume it has to do with fumes and sucking fumes of some kind, but I don't know what's inside the green thing.
So maybe we'll turn it on for a second, just so you can hear it. So can you hear that?
I can hear it when it started up, but then Zoom cut it out.
And that air is coming up there, going up this. There's the fan, and it's going through this gigantic MERV 15 filter. You can get MERV 16 filters, but that's a MERV 15. So, if you have fumes, this is designed for welding and soldering and all those other things that we do. we don't want fumes in the air if we can avoid it. And often it's pretty easy to just set up a regular fan and just blow the air outside, right? And that's okay. But when it's minus 30 Celsius in Canada, and you're taking all your warm air and you're blowing it all outside, that gets really expensive to reheat your building.
Yes.
So what this machine is doing is it's just recirculating the air in the room. There's no air going outside. It's this filter. So you're keeping all the heat in the room. So there's that part of it.
Yes.
So that's handy, and that's enough. But
how often do you have to change the filter on that?
It all depends on how abusive you are with it. You cannot put spray paint in there. You cannot, it's not a vacuum. You don't you don't suck up grinding particles and things. It's just for fumes.
Not a
you would replace that filter once every year. Yeah, it's not a shop vac. If you don't wreck it, that would be once a year, and that's about $300 for the filter. They say that they can go longer than that. It all depends on how much use you use. I may not use it as much, but if I'm doing
I'm sure you save that money back in the heating as well.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, you also don't want to die. I don't know about you, but that's not the worst of it. This is the straight out of Brazil HVAC system that I had to have installed because this is a commercial space. So this is an HRV, heat recovery system. Do you know what those are? Do you guys care about that? But so that's tied into the furnace. So we have a furnace in this space. What this machine does when I turn this on is it's taking all the bad air in my studio, leaves through that vent, goes into this heat exchanger. That brings in cold air from outside. The other one connects to the warm air. This one's bringing warm air from the studio, but it transfers the warm air that's in the studio with the new cold air coming in, exchanges the heat, blows the now cold bad air out, and takes the new fresh air that's been warmed up by the heat in the room and pumps it back into the studio.
Cool.
So what that does, it's like opening up a window in the studio in the middle of the winter without any cold air coming in or getting lost in the shop.
Wow.
You get fresh air, but fresh warm air.
Fresh warm air coming into the studio, and you're exchanging your cold air with warm air that's in the shop. So that saves you a fortune. Also in the summertime, if I have air conditioning, it does the reverse. So it takes the hot air from outside, lets it cool, keeps the cool air inside, and blows the your warm air back out again. So it does both winter and summer. So if you have an air conditioned shop and you want fresh air, you're not letting the heat of the day into the shop. You're just exchanging both heat, hot or cold. It exchanges. It doesn't care whether it's hot or cold. It just doesn't exchange. So that's a neat system to consider if you have a ventilation system on. If I turn that on, I don't have to use this. I can sit at my welding bench and solder all I want. And there's enough fumes going up and out that it's reasonable. But in combination with both, it's an absolutely luxurious system. So there's that to be considered in the studio.
Yeah,
so there we go.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, Jeff.
Oh, I know. No, it's expensive.
Well,
that unfortunately, I can see why perhaps people setting up their first shops and things like that. This is all just kind of really amazing stuff to have if you can get it, but it is quite expensive. And unless you're really established and serious, and you have a wife who can cash in her investments, I don't know if I would recommend it. But we do push it with our. But this way, I know I've done it right.
Yeah, the thing I think that's important to remind people of too, especially if they're just starting out or relatively new at this, is that, you start with what you have, you work with what you've got, you work safe, and you didn't start here. This is not your starting point. Like you said, This is your third studio. So, and I think it's important to remind people that, if you're doing this long enough, you're going to build your studio to be what you want it to be over time. And it's constantly evolving. It's not something that just suddenly springs out, the perfect studio and stays that way forever. I mean, your studio is going to evolve and change as you use it. And
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to know,
I have these little work
tables. Get somewhere, you have to have a path, right? Like you have to have a map. And you have to know where, if you want to get to someplace different from where you are, and you want that to be a specific location, not just, you wandered and ended up somewhere, you have to know what the destination is. So if you know what the sine qua non of ventilation and heat exchange systems is or are, then you can head toward them.
Yeah, it's good to know that they're necessary.
Yes.
A lot of goldsmith shops pretty much don't bother with most of this stuff. And you can get away with it to a certain degree.
You can to a degree, but it's better for your health and it's going to make the space more attractive to spend a lot of time in too, if it's more comfortable.
Yeah. Well, it gives you more time to work longer because you're around longer.
Hey, just why not? I wouldn't mind to get some value out of the space. Just to show you this table. So this is kind of an interesting combination of things happening on this table at the moment. Right now, you see just a board here. That's because I've been using this for pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And just to sort of clear this off for a second, like it's just a piece of wood underneath my fume hood because I've been putting my pitch bowl there, but that board goes away and you're now to your soldering station.
Right.
And, just a couple of bricks, but that gives you a stable place to be putting your pitch. But this board gets covered in pitch and stuff, and that gets thrown away and you put a new one on later. If it catches on fire accidentally, whatever, right? It's cheap, it's disposable, replaceable. Right. And that's this. And then this entire tray is removable too. This whole thing can come off in one piece. And then I have a welding table.
Well,
so depending on what I'm doing, and I have both MIG and TIG in the shop. So I'm not doing a dedicated welding shop here. I need to weld on occasion to make tools. And I have a steel floor underneath this area just in case, so I don't torch things.
Yeah.
And just even to say that the paint in the studio and the walls are all treated fire retardant chemicals.
Very smart.
So I have fireproof paint throughout the studio. So everything is, well, not fireproof, but I mean,
fire resistant.
Very fire resistant.
Yeah.
Fire retardant, And again, you have your pickle pot, and it's always a good idea to have some kind of barrier around your pickle pot so that if you get a little bit of splash, I don't want to wreck my beautiful new walls. It'll happen, but
well, and you don't want to rust all your tools sitting right on top of your steel either.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is just that combination area. I was going to point out that I have these little low tables here. I have 4 of these in this shop. They're from the old studio. Super handy to have these little tables that travel around the shop. You could put 4 of them together, almost make a workhorse or another table if you want.
Oh, okay.
They travel with me and live beside. So if I'm doing some work, I have this little table and I can bring it in and set it up where I need it. So these things, they park in a corner and they become what you need when you need it, where you need it. And they travel around the shop. Super handy little things. They're minions.
You should paint them yellow and blue. They're minions.
Yeah, minion tables. And they have their own little shelves and everything.
Each one is a little bit different.
What you're doing.
Each one, it's a minion.
Yeah, and they can be stacked up and they don't take up much space. You can use them as stools. You can sit on them. Super handy things to have in your shop.
I have a stool that I use for that very purpose because I don't use it as a stool. I end up using it as, something to hold whatever I need to hold wherever I need to hold it. So yeah, it does the exact same purpose. Yeah. Those are handy. Those are nice.
Those are handy. So again, on this side of the shop, we have another 2 of these smaller tool cabinets. And again, that is to support really kind of your drill press and things you need in the shop, like, all your drill bits. And, it's so funny because I think I have enough drill bits to last me like my entire life. And, you can spend your whole life trying to keep things organized in these things, which is all fine and dandy and everything. But sometimes you just don't have time to dick around with that. Yeah. So having your drill bits in sort of 3 basic sizes, big, medium, and small.
Yeah.
And again, even on my bench, I really kind of want to be down to maybe 3 or 4 drill bits, key sizes that I'm using, that I use all the time. Right. When we went to art school, we bought like every drill size imaginable. For what?
Right. For the 3 you use all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And again, nice. Right. Again, it's just that. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, sometimes you need to have a hole be exactly the right size, but a lot of the time you just need it to be, close enough. You're putting a saw blade through it, and it's like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, you were about to say about the top of the table.
Well, you have the table, but also just your task lighting. This is just task lighting that can swing around, and it's this particular light, slides on the table anywhere you need it, when you need it. The nice thing about the central 2-bench system here is that this light can very easily come over here and become what you need it. So you can give yourself all the lighting you need when you need it. I could have more permanent lights here, but at the moment, there's just the flexibility with the lights in the shop. This one comes over here.
Nice.
So there's a second bench in my studio. This one's dedicated to my jewelry company. So your earrings, Julia, or
my earrings came off this bench.
and like the kinetic, I have the line of kinetic jewelry, and that all those different styles of designs.
Oh, wow!
Be all in their own little trays. Pull it.
Yeah.
So we'll pull out a tray. There's all your parts.
Right.
And all the different gear choices and colors, they're all in these little trays and everything. So really simple. But the entire surplus inventory, this all fits in another cabinet down below. So there's a little layout table for cutting chains, this full cabinet down below that has all the surplus supplies. An entire company, the nice thing, gotta love jewelry. An entire business exists in these 3 cabinets.
Right, exactly. All of it.
It's incredible. And super easy to manage. Again, this little jewelry company is just a little side business, and you just, spend maybe an hour a day at this bench. Mm-hmm. But this bench also, again, serves as another purpose. All this stuff easily pushes aside. My apprentices can come in and have a bench for a day, no problem. Guest artists can come and they'll have a place to sit and work with me, whatever they want to do. It's lovely having that second bench. And again, there's every shop has to have a sink. I get that. I know, not terribly exciting news here, but you buy, hey, if you don't have a sink in your shop, it's gets pretty horrible pretty fast. And there's all kinds of things and processes that we need water for, that it's good to have. And places, of course, good old fashioned IKEA, you cannot go wrong. Then this is a commercial sink, but of course we can make our own stainless steel countertops and trims and stuff, so by the time you're done, it looks like a pretty custom thing. That's just very handy. Again, where do you fit this stuff when you're doing your layout? There's going to be a furnace. The way the studio is designed too, this is a sound absorbing material in the doors, so we don't have much sound leaving the studio, which is a really nice thing. But also just the general plumbing hooking up to the house from this position. This was the only place you could have a sink in the shop, and then you have to have a furnace, and then you have to have your polishing stations. We were lucky that we could fit all this into this corner and have this polishing station sort of snug in underneath this. That saved a lot of room. Then you have your polishing machine, and you have the ability to switch from your dust collector as we all know, these things very important. But there's also a sanding station here too, and that also has you can switch the air, so it's drawing most of your particles down into the dust collector. So this is a sanding station. So you have, this moment where, of course, there's some chairs and stuff here, but all the stuff moves out. Consider your sanding station, and all of your abrasives are in a cabinet right beside you. It's all easy. All your tools are there. You sit down, you got sunlight coming in, you can see what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I like the idea. I've never seen a sanding table done that way. That's really clever.
So smart.
With the holes in the top and just sucking it right in.
That's right.
We just got a question from the chat.
Oh my goodness.
Which was Knife Spot was asking method of dust removal. So clean. And so it was so perfect. Like that question had just come in before you started showing your sanding location. It's like, well, he's thought of everything because there it is.
Well, it's also only 2 weeks old too.
That's right. I mean, there still has to be dust collection systems set up for the belt sanders and everything, but the other thing is that it all depends on the intent of the shop, because there are some big ugly jobs I need to do. This shop is not the place where that'll happen.
Right.
This is customized for sort of the cat and mouse experience and those kinds of things. So, again, I guess it's my personal space. But I have other industrial shops. As you know, I do a lot of other big projects. So I have access to all kinds of large industrial places that will gladly let me come in there and use their facilities for the big ugly stuff. Yeah. So I kind of don't want to do that here. And also it's kind of nice maybe to get out.
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah.
Sure. Well, you've got some mice over there on the table behind you, right? Right there.
Yeah. So let's show what I'm doing. So this is the samurai mouse, which was this was in the last 2 years. These are the mice that I was building during COVID.
And what is he made out of, Jeff?
This one's a combination of, let's get a little more light on him. This is a combination of copper and brass. So it's been oxidized to give it that finish. And it's all hand chased bits and pieces. Is this in focus? Is that working okay?
Very much so, yeah.
Great.
And so that's your mixed media pieces and real cat whiskers for the whiskers. So people send them to me.
Have real cat whiskers on our cat.
Absolutely, from your cat.
It's a little. What did you call it? Like a cockade. It's like on the nose.
It's a fez.
What's it called?
A fez.
Like a little mini fez, like a little on the nose of the armor.
You have white cabinets so that I can use them as a light reflector.
Oh, that's nice. Oh,
so that's a little Viking mouse.
Gosh, he's just stunning. Oh. And they're all articulated. They all have parts that move.
Yeah, to a point. Some of them end up being a little more sculptural just because it's practical. I'm not going to go all out and make little buckles and everything for these things. It's just doesn't.
Tiny little buckles.
It doesn't make any difference. Yeah. But this is one of my favorite, most recent pieces. So this is the Maratha Empire and the Polish Winged Hussars fusion.
Loved seeing that one in the National Geographic article. So folks,
that's the one that I was putting together for the National Geographic.
Anybody watching this later, go check out the National Geographic article on Jeff De Boer. How long ago was it? The most recent issue?
Well, this is on their online.
On their online,
not in the magazine.
Oh, okay.
Properly. They may do the magazine yet, but for now it was all the online Nat Geo.
Which is wonderful because there's video. So there's a little video that's part of the article. So that actually allows you to see some of this stuff too. He's lovely.
And they did send a film crew, so there may be a short documentary coming out too.
Oh, awesome. We'll definitely share that with us, and we'll link to it when it happens.
The bindings on those, are those silk? What are those?
Yeah, they're so cute. I love the mixed media in these things.
Like silk parts that are tying it together?
Yeah,
or what?
Yeah. Okay. It's basically lace work,
Okay.
And just to show you another one, this is fantasy piece. So that's the Elven mouse.
Oh, lovely. I love it.
We had another comment earlier from Squarefish Phyllis, who says it's only fair to make armor for the mice if the cats have it.
Yes, well, I am supplying both sides.
Indeed, you're the Switzerland of armor manufacturers. Impartial and helping everybody.
Well, you got some time ago, many years ago. I think I was over on Granville Island, which was the first time I'd ever seen your work, I think. And there were I think they had, if I'm not wrong, I think they had some of your rocket pieces. It was a very long time ago.
Oh yeah, my rocket days. Yeah,
the rocket days. Yeah, and I think I saw, as you were walking around, one of your businessman ties that is the chainmail tie. And
yeah, I can again, just to kind of go down that sort of decoration path. These are drawings of things that I have built, and I realize it's nice to support other artists and have their art on your walls, but at the moment, the studio is a working space, and it's always a showcase and a gallery for people who might come to visit.
Right.
So this is one of my art tie pieces, and then there's another one on this side, the chainmail tie. And a few artifacts from some highly curated artifacts from my past up on shelves that, and also,
I saw the Mr.
just some
Potato Head and
some goofy things. Well, one of the students did me as a Mr. Potato Head back in my art college. So anyway, I still have that, but some models of some things that, there's a steampunk spaceship original.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
Of course, people expectations when they come into the studio is, there's the sort of the original sign from the original old studio, just to remind memories of where you were. Makes it a little easier.
In the sand of how far you've come. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to have that. It makes it your own. I mean, it's like your home. You're there all the time, and if you're spending all your waking hours in this place, you need to love it to want to be there, right?
Yeah, and again, this ceiling was part of that experience too. You could build a standard truss ceiling, and you would have, a fairly repressive ceiling over your head.
Right.
This is, I think it's like 15 feet to the peak here inside. And that gives you just these large wall spaces, but the sense of space around you, and even a very inexpensive lighting system, which is just conduit and light bulbs, just a nice classic, lots of them, gives you sort of an even light. And then that gives you the ability to control your task lighting, because, in metal, we like to have cross light and task light and have more control over that. So just the basic lighting system, and then lots of control lighting.
Yeah.
Again, go back and
ambient light around you, so it really opens up the space a lot.
Yeah, so like when I'm chasing,
working in their basements,
sometimes this cross light, so I can really see what I'm doing here. Anyways.
Yeah, and those are on brass or nickel there.
That's brass.
Okay.
I guess we'll have to do a how to chase like this workshop.
Let's do it.
Because how long does it take to make these parts? Would be the big question. How much time do you think I spent making parts?
I love that you were talking about practical chasing when we were talking to you. Like, there are ways to do it. Like there are ways with anything. There are ways to be more efficient, right? Like people often get this idea that if you're efficient, if you're too efficient, you're cutting corners. It's like, no, we're not cutting corners. We're being practical and efficient about how we're using the only resource that we have, which is time, right? So
these are examples of practical chasing. There isn't as much time in these as people might think, and there isn't as much misery in these as people might think.
Exactly. And so it makes them more, it makes you able to do more. You can make more pieces and get more wonderful ideas out of your head and into the real world, and it makes them more accessible for everybody else, right? So.
Yeah. Here's one of my rockets.
I love those rockets. They're just so amazing.
Yes, the bronze one.
I think.
Yeah, they do. This is another one. It's a UFO lamp.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that's very
keeping artifacts from your past.
Right.
You know,
well,
again,
also got some bigger sculptures that are more site specific. That are one of them is at what is it? Is it the Calgary airport or?
I have a whole bunch of them at the Calgary airport. You know, the giant wind-up tin toys, and I built three robotic animals in this sort of pseudo forest scene. Robotic animals at the airport, if you can imagine. Never build robots and put them in public spaces. Just a word of the wise. People can destroy anything. So
yeah.
But again, you know, I'll just walk around the studio again a couple of times here. So you know, you're going from putting in something in the pickle. Of course, you got to rinse it. You have to walk to your sink. There's the only sort of downside. But the walk is okay because you're not tripping over anything.
Right.
And you got this wide corridors, psychologically like the open ceiling. It's just really easy to walk through the space.
Well,
you're not, you know, you don't feel like you're.
When you've got electricity coming in from above to the center, rather than having to run cords to the middle.
Yeah, like power to the benches comes up through the floor.
Comes up through the floor. Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's no.
We have a friend who remodeled a garage recently into a studio, and so there was a plug in the ceiling for the old garage door opener. And so she had her contractor find her one of those the pull down extension cords, the kind they use over like benches in labs, right? Like in school labs. That has a reel, so it rolls the cord back up, and she can just pull it down, plug something in, and then she just can push it back up, and then she's not having stuff across the floor. So it's a good solution for the space that she had.
Yeah, we had that opportunity to put in floor plugs. So, you know, but again, you got to know exactly where your benches are going to go.
Exactly.
Right.
There's no, it's a nervous day when you're cutting a hole in your floor for your plugs, you know, or whatever. But okay, there's going to be a bench here someday. According to my plans, this is where the plug needs to be. Yeah, and then you set up your bench, and hey, the plug's in the right spot. Who'd have thought? But again, there's no going back.
I love that your apprentice bench faces you, that you have that little space, you have the little window between, so that it's a very very cozy kind of human moment in the center of your space, which I really like.
Well, and that's a great way to work too, because you can share tools and communicate, and
Well, I have not just that many tools. I have this many tools. I can reach and grab all these tools. I have this many this many scissors, this many whatever.
Right.
Yeah, we can share tools quickly, or ideas and thoughts. Really kind of fun. And again, the benches are heroic scale, and they have, any good bench has places for your elbows.
Right.
So you can rest and keep hands controlled and easy on your posture. The benches are quite tall, so you have good posture when you're sitting in your chairs, and the chairs are all adjustable. They all go up and down, so you can always have a straight back no matter what you're doing, because that gets really painful after a while. And again,
I do have
things
to
aren't.
say, I'm a little jealous of your magnificent collection of dividers.
Oh yeah.
I'm impressed. I mean, I thought I had a few dividers, but
No.
I am impressed.
No, you're not even close.
No,
Not even close.
Oh,
there are other drawers with more. Of course, when you're laying out something, if you're in production, you set up a divider for this bit, another divider for that bit, and they're all labeled.
Right.
Oh, nice. Yes.
You're not dicking around anymore, right?
Interesting. Yes, I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
I have to say, I love the bench with the deep semicircular cutout. The bench I have is what is sort of a more typical bench here in the States, which has it has a little shallow cutout in the front, and then it has two little bars that you can pull out. It's a very inexpensive bench, so it's two little bars you can pull out to rest your elbows on.
Yeah,
but I would prefer to have something a little more, that I could kind of lean into.
Yeah.
Well, again, you can put your elbows there and your hands are centered, and it's really easy to just, again, just put your elbow up here and you adjust your height to your work. And there's something about this big circle in front of you. And then there's this lower table too, where your tools are right there in front of you as you're working. You just drop them. You don't even have to put them on your bench. You just dump them on the ground. There's the extra trays of things down here. The other thing is I keep a large electric drill at my bench, right? Cordless one, not just my flex shaft, because that's super handy for deburring holes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your standard little Dremel that always has that stone you need just ready to go. Because I hate switching this shit around all the time.
Yeah.
I have two tools dedicated to things I don't want to do. So, like I said, and just a very limited amount of the exact drill bits I'm using, like for the next 6 months. That's it. That's the only drill bits I want to think about or look for on my bench. And, again,
it's efficiently. That's the whole thing. You're working efficiently. So, yeah.
It's easy to have more than you need. And then you're like, again, with the old shop, I had 2,200 square feet. I could have stuff just for the sake of having it. I can't have anything in this shop just for the sake of having it. Every square, it's kind of like living on a boat.
Yeah,
I'm calling the studio small.
Yeah.
But it made you really think about it. You had to really think about, what do I really need, and what do I really want, and what am I willing to give up space for or not give up space for?
Right.
Yeah. This isn't a great tray, but you have all these specialty trays that are dedicated to a specific mouse. We're talking about dividers and calipers. Mm-hmm. There are some parts that I make that have all these special measurements built into them. If I have to make this is for the samurai mouse. Or no, what is this one for? I guess this is for the samurai mouse, but this is a jig that fits over top of a helmet for a mouse and tells you exactly where your holes and everything go. If I have to reproduce a part in the future, it's the same thing as having, all this sort of reproducible artwork. Being able to reproduce a piece if one gets stolen, or if you want to sell another one, just having these things organized in a way that you keep a record of everything, and
if something gets damaged in some sort of little battle skirmish, you can
that's right.
Skirmish.
Like being the dealership, you got to be able to sell replacement parts, and every for example, the entire history of the creation of the Crusader mouse is in this spot. So every piece of artwork. So again, if I want to make a new edition or something in the future, or do a variation on the theme, you just know where everything is, and that's it's peace of mind, I guess. At the end of the day, it's the same thing with these drawers. They're easy to open. Throw the tool back. You know where it belongs. So when it comes time to clean the shop, there's not dust underneath things you're trying to get out. The tools all have a place. They all fall back into their place. It's much easier, faster to clean the shop. In fact, it's easier to clean the shop as you go on a ongoing basis. And it's not like it has to be an anal retentive, super clean shop, but But again, tables are only useful when they're clear.
Yeah. Well,
and
again, gets back to working efficiently. And all of us, I think, end up with, all the tools that we're working with on top of the bench at some point. But it gets to a point where they can't go back someplace and you can't, straight in the studio, you're suddenly not working very efficiently because you can't find the tool.
Yeah.
Not that you're not working efficiently, it's that you're not working at all because
that's right.
You can't move.
Then you're like battling with, do I need to make something or do I need to spend an entire day cleaning the studio? So.
Oh, Jeff, this has been really, really wonderful. It was so generous of you to be willing to spend an hour with us and record this. And we so celebrate your new space. It's like I'm always happy when a metalsmith gets his wings, right? It's a new studio.
Well,
it's great.
Well, it's just immense pleasure to be part of your community too, to be amongst my contemporaries.
Absolutely. Well, and it's we were I was in Wales with our friend and partner Helen Coward not too long ago, and met up with a metalsmith who had done all the glitters for season, and Lee Appleby, and Lee was so generous and kind to allow us to come into his studio and show us around and talk a little bit about his experience and his favorite tool. And his favorite tool was his rolling mill, his Durston rolling mill.
Yeah.
Just boom. But I'm going to ask you the same question. What's your absolute favorite tool?
Well, obviously the chasing tools, but the second favorite tool in my shop is going to be my hydraulic press. Yeah. And being able to die form and make die punches to cut out stuff quickly, efficiently. Being able to, like the RT blank systems and other things you can do with your hydraulic press, mind-blowing what you can do. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah,
it's super fun.
If you're just cutting and forming with that, that's indispensable, right?
Yeah, but like for a quick thing here, I'll just show you this a little bit while we're at it. This is a good example. I'm gonna switch my camera here for a second.
Okay.
And when I'm building mice, I'll have very, very precise stakes. So here's an example. But in order to make those pieces precisely, when I tool up a mouse, I have special punches to punch out all the parts for the body armor, and those are tuned to work specifically with. So this stake is designed specifically to work with that tool to make the cap of a Crusader mouse helmet.
Right.
So spending when I'm designing a new mouse, for example, the Maratha Hussar mouse, there's a tool just to shape that helmet.
Oh,
I saw some of your Instagram feeds on this.
Yeah, and there's a punch. Yeah, there's a punch that cuts out both halves of that helmet that are identical. So when you shape them against this symmetric stake, you can make that helmet. There's no practical way to make that helmet any other way. But the advantage to it is that both helmets if you make 12 helmets, they're identical.
And so interchangeable then.
When you're making a Legion.
They are. The other thing is that when you break out your dividers and you start measuring, this is where the payoff comes. That's why there's so many dividers you're talking about. Because when I start laying out where the ears go, I'm going to lay out all 12 in one sitting. They're all going to be identical. And that is a massive game changer in terms of, but the downside is, or the fun side is, making the tools is fun. But there's $4,000 worth of time and effort to get the tool sets made before you build them out.
And I think that's one of the other things that's really important for students and people who are coming to this that are kind of new and feeling like they can just go on to, it's like where do I get that tool? Where did you get that? It's like, I made it.
Yeah.
Or I customized it to do this thing. And I think we forget that. Jewelers have done that for centuries, eons. I mean, it's how we started, you know, and you make the tool to make the thing, or you adapt the tool to make the thing. And it's, that's just, it's such an exquisite example of that. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that.
Such a powerful thing to be able to do.
It is.
It is. That you need to, you know, elegantly and efficiently complete your task. I mean, there's a really visceral sense of satisfaction in having made the right tool for the job, that the specific job that you're doing. So
right.
I think I think the stakes are sexy as all get out.
Oh my God, it's true. They are. That's a sexy
something
stake.
About this. Again, but also the thing is it suddenly becomes fun when the parts, they always fit. One measurement, like it's so, like just to make articulating parts work is such, it's a time consuming thing, and each time it feels like you're reinventing the wheel, believe it or not.
Right.
So when things are consistent and uniform, the difficulty factor in the first one is there, but it gets progressively easier and more accurate as you move along on the other ones.
Yeah.
And that's becomes fun all of a sudden. It's not fun making a part that doesn't fit and you have to throw it away and start over again. That's never fun.
Yeah.
And
and
so fun.
Well, and making the models for that, and making the jigs for that, and sort of figuring that out, and having enough experience to know that those models and the design part of what you're doing is important. And that's one of the things I can't stress enough to a lot of our students, or my students in the past, that, you know, it's, you can try and run before you can walk, and that's fine. You're going to fall down a lot, but you'll learn how not to. But you could also get the design part down, and that's going to save you some time and measurements and materials as well.
Well, it's back to that eyebrow, right? There it is in clay.
Right.
Like I sculpted the little doggy face. I put in all those little details. I've sculpted in all the little lines. And somebody would ask me, well, what do you need that for? Well, I'm making this. If it doesn't look good here, what makes you think it's going to suddenly look good there?
Or be the right size. I mean, at least the clay model gives you something to measure and figure out how long it needs to be and how deep it needs to be.
When I'm drawing stuff and when I'm at the drafting table, I'm going back and referring to this. This is really my first drawing. It may look like a model, but it's actually a three-dimensional drawing.
Right.
And the same thing with how I'm patterning to make all these other parts. There's all kinds of, there's way more techniques going on here than meets the eye, but in this basic thing, it's luxurious to sit down and sculpt this thing. It's luxurious to make this unnecessary extra metal piece that I'm not going to use as a stand-in for the thing that I want to make, because I don't want it, like it has to work. Like it's chicken and egg. You need this before you can do that, but you need that kind of before you do this. Well, then go and do it, because it's the only way you're going to get through it. You cannot shortcut this, you know?
Right.
And as luxurious as a studio is, which is, I think the studio is luxurious, it's part of a mental state of not being, like, if your floor is covered in garbage, you're angry. If you're sawing something and your edges are sharp, the thing that you're holding, you're breaking saw blades and you're not in a good mood. Well, file your edges before you start sawing, like the thing you're going to throw away. Give yourself the luxury of
taking a minute,
taking a second to make the piece nice for you to hold on to while you're sawing it.
Yeah,
I do that all the time. You don't see a lot of gouges and scratches in my hands, even though I'm working in metal, because I just have this habit of making things luxurious for myself. And maybe
well, it is to enjoy the process, right? Yeah, enjoy the process. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's such a sensual way of working anyway, when you're working with, you know, clay and metal and hammering, and it's so tactile and so physical that if it doesn't feel good while you're doing it and you're hurting yourself doing it, you're not going to want to continue doing it for very long, right? You just at some point are going to break and not have the wherewithal to keep going. So,
well, again, I think that I had an epiphany. I don't know if I've invented anything, but they think that I'm super patient. Man, you're so patient. And I think that people think that patience is like some kind of noble, godlike virtue. It's not. For me, patience is a luxury item.
Telling us this. Turn that camera around.
Yeah, sorry. Let me turn my camera around. Like I'm saying something important here. I guess you want to see my face.
Face while you're telling me those.
So patience. Back on patience again. Everybody thinks that it's a virtue, and for me, it's not. It's a luxury item. I get to take the time to do these things. That's the difference. People normally don't feel they can take the time to do something, or take the time to make that model, or take the time. But slow down for a second. The faster way, the better way is to take the time.
Yeah.
And in time, you'll see the wisdom of that. And I'm not trying to get rich here. I'm trying to make the best things I'm ever going to make. That's it.
Well, that takes time, and it takes some planning.
Yeah. And I try to build this lifestyle that's let me do that. And, we as creators and makers, we're not just making things, we can make our lives, we can make our lifestyles. And we're the people who kind of have supposedly that special courage or that special insight or vision. And that's why it's so nice to hang around makers and people like that, because we're all like that. And, we don't have to say it. We all understand it. And we love to teach it and see it, embrace it and move on, and, that kind of thing. And so my studio
too, because it's like being able to share that with somebody else and see that epiphany in them, that it's like, oh, that is just, I love sharing that. And
and I've always loved the maker community, because that seems to be universally the culture, that we do these things, we share, we talk about. I mean, I'm showing people how to build a suit of mouse armor every day. So I'm not too worried about somebody building a suit of mouse armor. I'm just not. Because I had National Geographic Day, I was the first, best, and only. So after that, it doesn't matter.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much, and I look forward to having you teach a class with us. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Teaching a class in patience, or teaching a class and doing the articulated pieces, and rivets or forging or whatever it is that you can bring to it. We would be thrilled to have you. So, but
I'd love to teach it.
Very much for sharing your time with us tonight and sharing your day.
Super fun.
Yeah. We will talk to you guys later on.
Everybody out there watching.
Say again?
Okay.
It's
been super fun.
Well, hang on just a second. I'm going to tell everybody to stay tuned, and for next week's tooltip, we've got some fun stuff lined up for March and April, so stay tuned for that. And to those of you that are watching out there,